Hello, everybody. Chag Sameach. Jane, it's great to see you. So just to give everybody a heads up, we're already streaming, so I just want to make sure everybody knows before they say anything. But Jane, it's great to see you. Bonnie, good Shabbos. Marcia, good Shabbos. Okay. Let me just make sure. Oh, I think for the time being, you can unmute. Hey, Steve. Shabbos to you.
Shabbos.
Shabbos. There you go. We'll meet you all in a second. But
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Hey, Andrea.
Shabbat
Hey,
shalom,
Jack.
Steve Dickman.
Okay, good. Well, Neil, you got your wish. You got your wish. The power of the ex-presidents to sway the service to go virtual. But I think, from time to time, it's a nice thing, I think. And certainly I hope the rest of you are safe at home and out of this mess. That is for sure. All right. Good Shabbos, Alan. Good Shabbos, everybody. And as I said, Chag Sameach too. Hey, Toby.
Chag Sameach.
How's the weather in Florida? You're
It's
muted.
cold. It's going to go in Del Rey. It's going down to the 40s tonight.
It's 17. It was 17 degrees in Texas, my daughter said.
Really? Well, all I can tell you is I had a beautiful swim today.
Oh,
An extra lap each time, and I did it, and it was gorgeous.
Me too. I went to Peconic Bay. It was great. Very refreshing. Felt
Hey,
good.
a polar bear swim. He had a polar bear swim.
Yeah, that someday will explain that to me. That one I just will never understand.
I did it once.
Yeah.
Many years ago. I did it at Cooper's Beach. Yeah, it was.
God bless you. That's all. That's all I'll say. That's a kind of adventurous that I am just not. But
I would say better you than me.
yeah, for sure. But anyway, it's wonderful to see all of you, and it's wonderful also for our friends who are streaming our Zoom tonight. So what I'll do at this point is I'm going to mute everybody. Forgive me. And I'll let you unmute a little bit later. And I'm going to put me up here on the spotlight, and hopefully our friends at home can see me as well. And here we're going to light our Hanukkah candles before we light our Shabbat candles. So if you have a Chanukiah at home, a menorah at home, you're welcome to join with me. If you have a Siddur in front of you, a prayer book, it's on page 572. And as you'll see in a second, we're not using just any Chanukiah, just any menorah. This is one of Lou's prized possessions, a pink Cadillac menorah. Let me see if I can bring it a little bit closer here. Looking very, very fine, very fine. I'm not sure what year exactly, but I think it'll bring us a lot of good vibes tonight, to say the very least. So again, if you ultimately have, a Chanukiah around you, you can join me on page 572. And on 572, we'll do, again, first blessing. We'll light candles as we're saying the second blessing. And then there is another reading I'm going to do at the very bottom, which I want you to pay attention to because it's going to come back a little bit later in our service in an important way. So if you have yours, you can join with. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim hahem b'azman hazeh. There we go. Ma'oz tzor yeshuati l'chana el shabeach tikon be'tefilati v'sham toda nezabeach li'tachin matbeach mitzar hamenabeach azehor v'shir mizmor Chanukah tamizbeach Azegmur b'shir mizmor. Chanukah tamizbeach. Okay, we've got some candles lit, and just one other quick teaching while we're at it. There's sometimes a misunderstanding with the shamash candle, because most Chanukiot that you have in your mind are the sort of simple ones that look like the temple menorah, kind of like this, and the shamash is raised above the rest of them, that the expectation is that the shamash has to be above all the other parts. That's not correct. The only thing that's necessary for the shamash is that it needs to be set apart from the rest of them in a distinguishable kind of way. The rabbis are actually exceedingly practical in this way, and they assume that we're not necessarily the brightest bulbs in the drawer sometimes. And this way, there's no chance of mistaking what is used for this and used for that. So that's why Chanukiot actually can be very interesting and very intricate and all over the place. And they don't necessarily have to follow that very rigid structure of having something at the top and then things in sort of decreasing amounts and stuff like that. So we've lit our candles. Now, here's the extra piece I'm going to read. And again, I want you to pay attention to it because it'll occur later on. And technically, we're supposed to recite this every single time that we light the Hanukkah candles. Hanero talalu anu madlikin al hanisim ve'al niflaot ve'al shuot ve'al hamilchamot she'asita lavotenu ve'imotenu be'yamim ahem bazman hazer. B'chol shmonat yimei Chanukah hanero talalu kodoshem. Ve'ein lanu reshut lehishtamesh bahem ela lirotam libilvad. Kedei lehodot ulehalel l'shimcha hagadol al nisecha ve'al niflotecha ve'al yeshuatecha, which means we kindle these lights because of the wondrous deliverances that you, God, performed for our ancestors. During these 8 days of Hanukkah, these lights are sacred, kodesh him. We are not to use them, but only to behold them, so that their glow may rouse us to give thanks for yours, God's wondrous deeds and acts of deliverance. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It'll make more sense a little bit later. And in the meantime, we're going to shift our gears to our celebration of Shabbat, and we'll move back in our prayer books, if we have them, to page 120 as we now bless our Shabbat candles. Again, page 120. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Okay, I know you can't be heard, but you can say amen. Don't worry. Okay, nobody will be judged, I promise. We're going to turn now to page 130, and we'll begin Kabbalat Shabbat together, very, very top of the page. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Naria, naria, letzur yishenu. Nekadma fanav betodah. Naria, naria, letzor yishenu. Mizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena. Lechu neranena ladonai. We'll turn now to page 131. Page 131 at the very top of the page, Shiru Ladonai. Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. Shiru ladonai baruch shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. Shiru ladonai, shiru shir chadash. Shiru ladonai kol haaretz. Shiru ladonai baruch hu shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. Shiru ladonai baruch hu shemo. Basru meyom leyom Yeshuato. We'll turn now to page 132, Or Zarua, which is at the very bottom of the page. Or Zarua la tzadik. Uleishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik. Uleishrei lev simcha. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai. Vehodu lezecher kodsho. Simechu tzadikim b'Adonai, vehodu lezecher kodsho. We turn now to page 134, Zamru Ladonai, at the very top of the page. Zamru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. V'chatzotzrot v'kol shofar, ahariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, Yiram hayamu tevel ve'yoshvei neharot imchahu chaf yachad harim yiraneinu. Lifnei Adonai kiva, lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel betzedek, vehamim mesharim. Yiram hayamum lo, tevel veyoshveva. Neharot yimchahu chaf yachad, harim yiraneinu. We'll turn now to page 135, Romamu, which is the Hebrew, last little 3 lines of Hebrew in the middle of the page. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehakodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehakodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Turn now to L'chadodi on page 138, and we'll do the first, second, fifth, and final paragraph. We usually do the standing part of the final paragraph, but I will leave that up to you and whether that's something that you would like to do. L'chadodi likrat kalai alalai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabelai. L'chadodi likrat kalai alalai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor vezachor bedibur echad, ishmianu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shemu tiferet ve'elitila. L'chadodi likrat kalai alalai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabelai. L'chadodi likrat kalai alalai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabelai. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor haberacha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila, lecha dodi likrat kalai yalanai 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 pnei Shabbat. Mekabela lecha dodi likrat kalai yalanai 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 pnei Shabbat. Mekabela, fifth paragraph. Hitoreri, ki vaorech kumi ori, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla, lecha dodi likrat kalai, yalanai, 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 pnei Shabbat. Mekabela lecha dodi likrat kala yalanai 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 pnei Shabbat. Mekabela moi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvetzola. Toch emunei am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, lekabela, lecha dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. If you're standing, you can be seated. We're now on page 140. Tzadik Katamar in the Hebrew, just where it indents in the middle of the page. Tzadik Katamar yifrach keres babanon Iske shetulim bevet Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun besevam Deshenim ve'ananim yehu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri velo avlatamo. We'll turn now to the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabba ve'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich machutei ve'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayedecho beit Yisrael ba'galaha u'bizman kariv ve'imeru Amen. Yehesh me'rava mevarach le'alam le'al me'al maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata Tamiran mehalma veimeru. Amen. We're now on page 146. Baruch Hu in the middle of the page. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Just because you can't hear yourself doesn't mean I can't still feel it. I can see the responsive parts, still very important. We're now on page 148, and we'll read together in English at the very bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil beyom uvelaila, Adonai Tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Amari Varhavim. We'll turn now to page 151, and we'll read together in English at the bottom of the page. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Because Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha v'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'shofbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam lamezuzot beitecha u'v'hisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kadoshim le'elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hoseiti etchem Yeretz Mitzrayim Liahod lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. Let's read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158, Michamoch at the very top of the page. Yabai bye bim 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 bam yabai bye bim bam yabai bye bim 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 bam yabai bye bim bam yai bye ba 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 bye yabai bye bim bam yai bye ba 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 bye yabai bye bim bam mi chamocha bailim Adonai mi kamocha nedar bakodesh Nor atihilot osefele, nor atihilot osefele. Yabai bye bim 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 bam, yabai bye bim bam, yabai bye bim 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 bam, yabai bye bim bam, yai bye ba 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 bye, yabai bye bim bam, yai bye ba 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 bye, yabai bye bim bam. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeyam lifnei Moshe Miriam, zeli anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'en. V'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugolo miad chazak mimenu, Baruch at Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Hashkivenu is on page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu Shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu Shomreinu lechaim. Ushmor tzeiteinu Uvoeinu lechaim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. We'll turn now to page 162, Vishamru at the very top of the page. And we'll sing the Shabbat morning melody because Alan, I don't know if he's still on, but Alan had pointed out, different Alan had said, it doesn't always have to be a dirge. Okay, it can be a happier version. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. And, piece of trivia, because it's been a long time. The reason we don't normally do that melody at this point in the service is because it's what we used to do when we would go next door for Kiddush. We would sing that before we would do Kiddush. So that's why if it sounds somewhat familiar to you and you're not a Saturday morning person, that's where you know it from. And when we get back to that point, that's probably what we'll do again. But for now, nice to have a bit of an upbeat melody on a cold, wintry night, for sure. So beginning on page 164, we'll start the Amidah together. And then from that point on, we'll continue silently as we always do. And please, as always, go at your own pace. And we'll take probably 3 or 4 minutes or so, give or take, so no one feels rushed. And I'll put up my little screen that says, silent Amidah. And really take your time and pray either the words on the page or the prayer of your own heart. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Ose shalom bimromav. Uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel. We'll turn now to page 371 to offer our Misha Berach for the evening. In a moment, I'll read our Misha Berach list, but I'll invite those also who are on the chat. If there are additional names that you want to share in the chat, you're welcome to add them. Those that are watching at home, to say your loved ones' names out loud or hold them in your hearts. As a community tonight, we're thinking of Bentzi Tepper, Allison Luckman, Malka Bat Chaya Sura, Michael Klinghoffer, Amy and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Sylvia, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sivia Devora Bat Francis, Muriel Hirsch, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Rose Spicer, Barbara Kushner, David Kyle Klotman, Lorraine Davis, Michoel Ben Chananya, Devora Bat Sima, Rebecca Snyder, Jeffrey Miller, Shelley Lyman, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Orn, Stanley Rappaport, Karen Layton, Debbie Bookvar, Carol Javna, Lori Nisanoff, Roberta Kyle, Miriam Batchana, Dina Batchana, Mindy Cantor, and Estelle Gluckman. In addition to those names, we'll add the names that have been put into the chat and the names of our loved ones and friends at home, and we'll join together on page 371 to sing our Misha Berach, our healing prayer for tonight. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Chag Sameach. And I'm excited to share a teaching with you tonight from one of my teachers, which is always one of the great joys for me personally. Some of you know the name. You've either heard of him from before, even before my time, and some of you may not be familiar with. At the time, he was my professor of liturgy at HUC-JIR. His name is Dr. Professor Rabbi Larry Hoffman. So Larry Hoffman is, in the Reform world in particular, is considered to be probably the foremost expert on Jewish liturgy, on how we pray. And at some point in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, in particular during the lockdown period, he started to write just sort of missives, things that he's been thinking, things that he's changed in his thinking, all sorts of stuff. And he put it up on Facebook within his friend group, and he called it Letters to My Students. And that was really the frame in which he's written these letters. And he's continued to write them to the point in which the one I'm sharing with you tonight is number 43 on the list. So he's written many books. He has the making certainly of another one here if he ever felt that he wanted to produce it. But I think what makes this work so meaningful is that unlike his previous works, which are, generally speaking, in the academic world, in the academic style, or in the sort of, self-help kind of mentality, in the sense of helping Jewish people to find on their own a way and a pathway into prayer. But I think these have been very personal. He's written them really from the perspective of a person who's, lived his entire life, especially his entire adult and professional life, deeply immersed in the process of Jewish thought. And as somebody who shares that space, understanding that it's something of a unique experience, And as you live through it, and as you see all sorts of things, and as you experience things yourself, your perspectives on a lot of core ideas and texts change over time, and not just ideas and texts, but also holidays. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is, I hesitated to do it, but to fit it into this time period, I had to edit down a little bit of his total writing. But if anybody's interested in seeing it in its totality, I'll be happy to share it. And I'll try to indicate the places where we skipped a little bit. But I'm going to actually put it up on screen so that we actually can see it. You don't have to watch it that way. I'll read it out loud. But this way we can all follow along as best as we possibly can. So I'm going to put it up on screen right now. Hopefully everybody can see it. Yes, everybody can see it okay. Let me zoom it in a little bit here. Okay. So where Professor Hoffman begins is the way he actually begins with a lot of things. Is he asks the question, as rabbis generally do, but he asks the question that's kind of on many people's minds about this holiday. Okay, particularly Hanukkah for adults. Okay, what do we do when we're no longer children? How do we relate to this holiday? So he begins, how is an adult like me to celebrate Hanukkah? I am far too old for presents, as are my children, and even pretty soon, my grandchildren, who live in any event too far away to light the candles with me. Yet, I light them, mostly alone, but with an adult message of Hanukkah spirituality in mind. So he's telling us right off the bat that he's going to try to shift our paradigm a little bit here. When the holiday is oftentimes, for a very good reason, focused on children and on present giving and all of those kinds of things, that he is looking to it now actually as a teacher of a deeper spirituality. So what is that spirituality in essence? It starts, he says, with a single line of an 8th century Hanukkah prayer, largely forgotten today, but still around and sung by many who, however, are probably unaware of its spiritual implications. So you may remember at the beginning of the service, if you were with us as we were lighting our Hanukkah candles, I added an additional paragraph in there, and that is what he's referring to here. Its origins are 8th century. It sometimes is used, sometimes not used in our world, but it's actually very important. It's supposed to be done along with, as I said, the lighting of the candles. And in that particular prayer, in that particular statement, we see the phrase in Hebrew that referring to the lights, Kodesh Ham, that these lights are holy. Now, he says, holiness has many connotations. As the primary value in Jewish tradition, it has accumulated many meanings over the 3,000 years of Jewish experience on this planet. You know, I think a technical person's going to argue with him about the number of years, but we'll give him the credit in this case that he knows what he's talking about. But none, he says, is more surprising than this particular prayer, this particular idea. These lights are holy, it begins, Kodesh Ham, but then it continues on in the second part of the line. And an explanation of this follows. These lights are holy, colon, Ein lanu reshut lehishtamesh bahem. We may not use them. Okay, these are holy lights, but we are told immediately afterwards that we can't use them. So what does Hoffman explain for us? What does that mean? Contrast the lights of Hanukkah with the lights of Shabbat. Suppose one Shabbos evening before bed, you're engrossed in a brilliant mystery novel. Just as you're about to discover who done it, a freak December snowstorm or whatever it may be, windstorm, shuts down your electricity. It's Friday night, however, so you can finish your book by the light of your Shabbat candles, no problem. But suppose it is an extraordinarily large Hanukkah candle instead, glowing in the dark. Sorry, you're out of luck. Hanukkah candles, right, can only be used, these lights are holy, but we can't use them in this way. Unlike Shabbat, Hanukkah lights are not utilitarian. Right, so just to be clear again, what he's saying is a Shabbat candle, if we lived in a world before electricity, could be used to light your home, to give you guidance when you're walking around, to read by, all of the things that you're allowed to do, as long as it's lit before Shabbat. But when it comes to a Hanukkah candle, if you have no other candles in the house and the power goes out, you're not technically allowed to use that light from the Hanukkah candle for any particular purpose. Okay, not utilitarian. It's not to say that they don't have a purpose, though. There is a difference between the use we make of something for our own ends and the inherent purpose that a thing has in and of itself. We properly appreciate it only when we engage with it on its own terms. Okay, so again, he's trying to distinguish between how we think about something that just exists in its own right and something that we use for a particular purpose. Judaism's word, he continues, for its own terms is the Hebrew word lishma, meaning roughly for its own sake. We describe Torah study especially as being lishma. studied for its own sake, not because, say, we could get a better job if we learn it. Okay, it's not a vocational document. It's not going to instruct us in how to be a better engineer or a better bridge builder or whatever it might be. But Torah study is not without purpose, making us better people, perhaps, or surprising us with spiritual insight. So too with the holy lights of Hanukkah, says Professor Hoffman. Their inherent purpose, says the Talmud, is to shine the news of God's miracle of light, recalling the days of the Maccabees. That's all. Simply by looking at them, we acknowledge the possibility of miracles in our lives. But the key here is we may look at them, but we're also told to look at them disinterestedly, without our own interests in mind. We cannot read by their light, do the dishes by them, carry them around the house to light our way. This would be, as the rabbis teach us, a misuse of holiness. We might even say, and this is the most provocative statement of the whole thing, holiness is wholly useless. To use the holy is inevitably to misuse it. Okay, so he's playing with words here, but he's trying to drive towards an ultimate point. Consider Torah, and he actually gives several different examples, and I sort of boiled it down to this one. Consider the Torah, which, as we saw, is to be studied lishma, for its own sake. The rabbis warn us, though, not to use the Torah as a spade to dig with, not to use it for our own ends. Technically, it is even forbidden to get paid for teaching it, because the teacher would then be using Torah to earn a living. Thankfully, for rabbis around the world, there's a workaround, so don't worry. We're not violating anything by me teaching you Torah. But this is, technically speaking, if one follows the rabbinic logic, it would be illegal to make money off of teaching Torah because it shouldn't be done for anything other than lishma. The synagogue, too, is holy, or at least the sanctuary is, tells Rabbi Hoffman. Once upon a time, synagogues were single-room structures, not the multi-purpose buildings with everything from boardrooms to gymnasia. So, Neil, you can hear that, right? It would have been very simple if we were just dealing with one building, one room, but certainly it's more complex than that. But that single-room synagogue was likened to the central room of the temple where sacrifices once took place. Instead of sacrifices, we today have prayers, the quote-unquote offering of our lips in rabbinic understanding. So the rabbis ruled, though, for example, that we may not use the synagogue as a shortcut. In other words, we have to think of the synagogue as being a representation of the central room, the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies of the temple, the highest level of spiritual space that we have ever possessed as Jews, right? So in this particular case, we're not allowed to use the temple as a shortcut, going in one entrance and out the other to avoid going around the block and driving rain, for example. Believe it or not, the rabbis actually think of this particular issue, and they say that a synagogue can't be used as an expedient route, even if it's going to save you from something or other. Synagogues, we're told, the space itself is Kodesh, it's holy. We may enjoy their inherent purposes, but we may not make extraneous use of them. Okay, this is a restriction that exists, technically and in practice for basically every synagogue we've ever created. And lastly, he says, and finally, human beings are holy. We are Kodesh. The rabbis discussed temple priests who had to walk up a stone ramp to reach the altar where the sacrifices occurred. As part of the altar structure, the ramp is holy. So the priests are advised to take tiny steps along it rather than great strides. Why? Lest the stones under which they walk be exposed to a view, literally, of the priestly underwear, so to speak. Okay, so the idea is that the walkway leading up to the altar was considered so holy, the stones themselves considered so holy, that the rabbis didn't want the priests, or the priests in the end were instructed, right, not to take too great a stride so as to be immodest towards these stones that would otherwise see up their toga, as it were. I know, hard to believe, but sure enough, this is actually part of our tradition. There then follows a remarkable observation about the holiness of human beings. Okay, this is coming from Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael, which is a collection of Midrash. It says, now, if God said, do not act disgracefully in the case of stones, which cannot intend good or evil, then all the more so, we should not act disgracefully in the case of other human beings who are made in the image of the one who spoke and the world came into being. In other words, says Rabbi Hoffman, we human beings who can intend good or evil are holier than the temple itself, because we are made in the image of God. Human beings are holy. We are not permitted to use one another. What a Hanukkah lesson for us, says Rabbi Hoffman as he concludes, who regularly make the mistake of defining our worth in terms of what we achieve, how much we accomplish, how useful we have been. Hanukkah lights remind us that there is a higher order of value than our achievements. Our true value lies not in our holiness, just being, not accomplishing. And because we, like God, are able to devise good or evil, we are to, quote, be the kind of person who also, like God, chooses to be good. So again, it's a few places where I cut, but Rabbi Hoffman, again, is a brilliant writer and a brilliant thinker. And what is he ultimately trying to say to us? And I think this is applicable to any age, regardless of whether you have children or grandchildren who are still opening presents. As we get older, we realize, I think, increasingly that presents are not the fulfilling part of the holiday. The fulfilling part of the holiday is the holiday itself. You know, I have to have the conversation with my daughter every night of the holiday because she wants to open presents before we light candles. And I say to her, the candles are the holiday. Okay, the presents don't happen without the candles. The candles are everything. And our whole purpose is just to look at them and appreciate how beautiful they are. I lose that argument constantly, but it's one that I still have to make because in the end, you know, being holy, this concept of kadosh that is so, on the one hand, amorphous and ambiguous, and on the other hand, so central to how we define ourselves as Jews, that the best way to understand it is to respect it for its own sake, right? Not to chase it like some glass or brass ring, right? And not to think of it as some achievement. It's not, we're not searching for nirvana. We're not searching for enlightenment, right? We're searching for really is this idea of something that is inherently beautiful in its own right, which is our existence and each other's existence. And I think this re-emphasis on the idea of not using one another in the way that we tend to use each other. You know, we have the same kind of compulsion about gifts as we do about people. You know, we think about each other and then we ultimately think about ourselves in this utilitarian sense. What is our value? What is our worth? What is our you know, ego? What is all the stuff that we feel like externally needs to exist in order for us to feel something good about ourselves and about each other? And the answer is really actually to do the exact opposite. It's counterintuitive to us as humans. It's countercultural to every single one of us in pretty much every culture that's ever existed, to tell you not to worry so much about your possessions and your achievements and how you look to the outside world. But it's inherently Jewish. And that most of our focus really ought to be on, in this period of time especially, what kind of light am I in the world? How can I connect to other lights in the world? And how in particular can I fight against the instinct to be a source of darkness? You know, we tend to think that it has to be only the most evil people in the world who are capable of producing darkness. It's not true. We're all capable of it, and we do it on a regular basis more often than we'd like to admit. And it happens in just small instances in which we attempt to use and to make objects for useful purposes out of the people that we love. Forget about the people that we hate. And I think that Rabbi Hoffman is teaching us that this is a holiday actually that, while it is understandably a part of the sort of holiday zeitgeist that exists in this country and in other places in the world, that its inherent purposes are deeply spiritual and actually quite instructive on a personal level of how we, especially in the darker months of the year where it's easier to just go to sleep earlier and sort of wait for winter to be over, that actually this is a time period of the year where we have some real good spiritual inner work to do, and all the better to do it while we're being confronted by a world of sort of bombarding materialism and this sort of ubiquity of talking heads, right? This is a time to fight against that world and that instinct, and to simply say that we're going to focus on the simpler but more fundamental ideas like, what does it mean to be a holy person, a holy people, a holy community? And how can we remember the word Hanukkah itself, it really means dedication. So how can we focus our attention, dedicate ourselves to the real principles of our people and our history and our legacy? And for that, I'm extremely grateful to Rabbi Hoffman for sharing his teaching with all of his students. And I hope in some diluted way I've shared it with all of you in a way that is meaningful. So I wish you all really again a Shabbat Shalom and a Chag Sameach. And it's a funny thing. We've been celebrating the last few nights on our Zooms with our teens who are going off to college next year. And I'm increasingly feeling that old rabbi who's looking about his students and thinking, what is the messages that I want to convey to them? And I wish I could do it as eloquently as Professor Hoffman, but I still try. Because I think even, our young people, they still need that kind of guidance. And I think it can come from all of us in all directions. Enough of me talking. We'll go to page 586 and go to the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach, again, page 586 at the very bottom. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, vanachnu korim umishtachavim umodim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Page 591. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad. Ushemo echad. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. We think tonight, as we offer our mourners Kaddish, those that have passed in our community in recent months, Martin Blake, Lynn Cowan, Arlene Eber, Chaim Bear Greenwald, Sandy Greenwald, Erica Hecht, Jane Beard Cass, Gertrude Katz, Buddy Kossoff, Helene Krotman, Emmanuel Kiprios, David Lieberman, Sandra Luongo, Norma Polsek, David Sent, Anita Sheldon, Alan Silver, Sandy Slip, Larry Wartor, Peter Weinstein, Rita Weitzman, Matthew Adam Zimmerman, Yael Zerdar, and Marvin Schreier. We also marked the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Augusta Axelrod, Fred Eber, Iago Galdston, Bessie Goldberg, Beatrice Gruber, Sylvia Honig, Ruth Kahn, Rose Kaplovich, Bertha Karp, Rain Kelman, Victor Kessler, Vera Lee, Emily Levy, Michael London, Bob Matlick, Barry Metzger, Jaime Mozart, Morris Peskowitz, Jacob Ruby, Harold Sender, Amy Shapiro, Meyer Simon, Philip Spiegel, Andrew Strasser, Erwin Weitzman, Nat Zimmerman, and Evelyn Zucker. In addition to those names that we read, if anyone who's on our Zoom has additional names to share, you can put them in the chat. Those that are watching at home can say the names of your loved ones aloud or keep in your heart. And we'll invite the mourners to join with me on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Bagala uzman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'le'almei almayim. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam libracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Shabbat shalom, everybody, and Chag Sameach. So I'm going to ask one favor. I'm going to put it on gallery view so I can see everybody's faces. But what that means is that I believe the internet will also see the gallery. So if you're the shy type, you could turn your video off. We won't blame. And at the end of the service, we'll have a little kibbutzy time that's off the internet stream and all of that. But I want to give the heads up. But it is great to see all of you, and Chag Sameach, and thank you for weaving with me through that longer than normal sermon, but something I hope was meaningful to you as it was to me. All right, few important announcements. Shabbat services tomorrow, from my understanding from our executive director, who was really my boss, Shelley. She felt it was safer for everybody, and I agreed with her that we should stay home, and she was correct. And I imagine that it's going to be worse probably tomorrow morning because of the ice. So our service will be Zoom only. You're welcome to join on the Zoom itself or watch on the live stream or YouTube, Facebook, website, whatever you prefer, and then to join us for Torah study on Zoom at 12 o'clock. Speaking of Torah study, just to note that our Women's Torah commentary, which will be coming up at the beginning of January, is going to be taught by Myra Peskowitz. So all of you Myra fans out there want to put that on your radar, make sure that you know about that. Join us again for our candlelighting, 6 o'clock for the next 2 nights. Tomorrow night I'll be on for the last night. Shelley is going to help lead it because I will actually be with my family in the city for the first time in a long time. And I will be away for that piece of it. But you guys will have a great time with Shelley on Sunday. Come with, join us tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. Again, same Zoom that we've been using throughout the last few days. On Monday, Nina Mitzvah meeting 11:30. Andrea, yes, okay. Social Justice Committee has its regular meeting 5 o'clock. Alyssa, good. My classes will not be happening next week. I'm having my first vacation probably actually since the exact same time last year, now that I think about it. So I'll be gone until Shabbat next week, and I'll be back in time for Shabbat. So I will see you then. Heads up, a few very great things coming up in January. January 12th, we're having a virtual presentation update on our building progress, which is closer and closer as we go, including myself, our architect, Bill Chaliff, our project manager, Tom Ackerson. I think that our building, I guess, is Buddy going to be on, Neil? I don't know. Okay, you're muted, so we'll figure it out. I don't know if you can unmute at the moment. So, but it will be nice. We're gonna have pictures, we're gonna have videos, we're gonna talk about it. And just as importantly, we're gonna get to know the people who've really been working on this. And I realized that, since we did the groundbreaking, which was already now quite a while ago, we haven't really given a chance to hear from Bill Chaliff, who's a remarkable architect, from our project manager, Tom Ackerson, who is incredible and has managed a very complex building project. It's a great thing also to show them that we care about them. So it's a Zoom program. You don't even have to leave your house, but I would love to see a great turnout for this. I think it would make everybody feel really good. If you can't make it, I think we're also going to record it. So we'll have lots of stuff. We'll send it after. So again, that'll be January 12th. I believe that's a Thursday evening. Also, and this is a really wonderful thing, we have to thank Reverend Kimberly at the UU for suggesting it, and for after the really wonderful interfaith Thanksgiving service that we had, we were looking for other opportunities to do things together as a wider community here in Sag Harbor and Bridgehampton. And we're going to commemorate Martin Luther King Day a day early. It'll be the Sunday right before King Day. And we're going to gather together for an interfaith service in both remembrance and celebration of King's life. And so this is going to involve participation from a number of the local churches, myself and others. It's going to happen for sure in person on Sunday, the 15th at 4 o'clock, being hosted by our friends at the UU on the Bridgehampton Turnpike. I'm working with them also to have a streamed version. I can't promise it yet, but I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to make that happen. So again, that'll be the Sunday right before King Day, and hope you can join us there. Also a reminder that on January 18th at 11 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have an in-person docent-led tour of the New York Historical Society's exhibit, The Jewish Deli. Okay, finally, we're in the place where I really know my most. And then if you'd like to, you can join me afterwards. We're going to go get deli across town on the east side. I'm still going back and forth between 2nd Avenue Deli and Pastrami Queen. But one way or the other, we'll have a good meal, a good time. And if you don't want to join us for lunch, you can still join us at the museum. But please, you must register for this ahead of time. We need to know who's coming and how and all of that good stuff. So we hope you'll join with us. And I believe we passed the cutoff for our trip to the south, right, Alyssa? I think we're past the 20th. But I'm very proud. I'm really happy. We have a great turnout for it. It's going to be a really wonderful trip, and hopefully it can perhaps become something that we do more frequently in the future, because it's not really just a one-off. It really is a layered experience. So I think that is really great. And Alyssa, I don't know if there's anything specific to social justice, if you want to put it in the chat or when we reconvene at the end for our virtual ONEG, but otherwise just keep doing your great work. And I hope everybody's really had a wonderful Chag so far. And it's really, again, I know Zoom is a something we haven't done in a while, but every once in a while when we do it, it's lovely for me. I get to see more of you, and I know a number of you who weren't able to come in person, and I miss you. And I just think it's great. So with all of that, again, I'll wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to put myself back as the speaker here on my end. And we're going to end our service by singing a little bit more Hanukkah. And then I realized that I think I left the Kiddush cup over there, so I'll go grab it in a second. But if you want to follow along, the Hanukkah songs are on page 668 and 669. I think we already sang Miyam Alel earlier, so we can close out with Ma'oz Tzur. Top of page 669. Ma'oz Tzur Yeshuati Lechana El Shabeach Tikon Beit Tefilati Misham Toda Nizabeach Lietachin Matbeach Mitzar Hamenabeach Azegmor Beshir Mizmor Chanukat Hamizbeach Azegmor Beshir Mizmor Chanukat Hamizbeach. Okay, hold that spot. I'm going to get my Kiddush cup right back. Okay, well, Kiddush cup is downstairs, but I found a bottle of Manischewitz and a cup that has dogs on it. So sometimes you have to adapt. If Hanukkah teaches us one thing, not always a perfect situation. You have to make the best out of what you got. So certainly here, page 123. Thank you, Marcia. And you can join with me at home if you have. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'vratzon enchilanu zikaron lemahaseh bereshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim ki bahanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta Mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'vratzon enchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha'shabbat. Amen. Hope it's clean. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody. Again, Chag Sameach. And for anybody who is on our Zoom, you are welcome to stick around. We'll just have a little kibitzing once I shut off the camera. But to those watching on the stream, Chag Sameach to you, Shabbat Shalom to you, and especially those who are in dangerous areas with weather. If you can, stay home. Stay home. There's really no reason to go outside, and it's actually dangerous to people that do need to go outside. So really, be safe, pikuach nefesh, and all that good stuff. And we'll see you soon. Again, services tomorrow.